Shalom from Jerusalem. My name is Albert Wexler. I'm the director of Jerusalem Prayer Breakfast, and we are here in the Museum of Friends of Zion, together with a fantastic gentleman, Nir Salomon. Nir is an executive director of Committee for the Rescue of Israel's Babies, founding member of Israel's Fund for Mine Clearance, and spokesman for town of Neriah, and many, many more things that we will hear from Nir. But we are here for one reason. We are here to give you answers. Answers because the tide is turning against Israel. You've seen it. 100,000 people demonstrating in London for Hamas. Can you imagine what the world has become like? People being murdered, people being killed, atrocities we haven't seen since the Holocaust. And they would go out and demonstrate for Hamas. Nevertheless, we are strong, and we want you to be strong together with us. So, Nir, I'm really, really happy that you agreed to come. I know you are very, very busy fighting for our soldiers, fighting for your towns and ishuvim. I don't even know how to say it in English best way.
I think towns.
Towns would be right. And you have been now very, very busy. So tell us a little bit what's been filling your days with this teaming activity.
So thank you, first of all, for letting me be here and doing this, to update friends. We've been at your Jerusalem prayer breakfast in different places in Jerusalem and in the United States, and it's so important. We'll talk about that in a moment, but I'll tell you a little bit about how our lives together have turned from side to side. So my son serves in the Golani Brigade. It's one of the elite army units here in Israel. And for a long time he was in training. He finally came home for Shabbat, for the wonderful holiday of Simchat Torah, where everybody dances with the Torah, so joyous and so wonderful. And we got the phone call very early morning that something happened down south in Israel. He just got onto his clothing. A woman said to me, she came to our house, she said, I just saw such a moving sight. I said, what happened? She says, I saw you running with your son to a car that was going to pick him up to go to the army. He's with his coat and weapon, and you stopped him for a second and you gave him the priestly blessing. She says, that moved me tremendously. So our spirits are high, like you said, they're very, very high. But since that moment, life changed in Israel as we know it. As you said, the tides have been turning. So I'm the executive director of the organization Efrat, where normally we are helping build families. We save babies from abortion. Over 85,000 babies we've saved to date.
It's amazing.
It's amazing. Amazing how many soldiers today fighting on the battlefront are actually children that we have helped save. It's overwhelming. However, as the Efrat organization, we realize we have to somehow now help the soldiers out on the battleground, not only build families, but protect the families themselves. So I wear many hats, but they all for some reason came merged together. So I was drafted into the emergency response team in the town where I'm the spokesman, in the town called Neriah, the light of God. It's a beautiful, beautiful town, like many beautiful towns in Judea and Samaria, but we're isolated from the major cities here in Israel, and we are in between bunches of small Arab villages that we know for fact are out to do the same things that they did down south, to do in mainland Israel, to do up north, etc. So being part of this unit, we realize that we have to beef up security. The army just doesn't have the time, doesn't have the manpower, and if you can imagine, I don't know anybody, all of the friends that we're turning to, I don't think you and I could have imagined until we saw what happened that Shabbat. People just emptied out to go into the army units that they are, your son, my son, and many, many, many others. And all of a sudden, we are left to literally defend our homes. So what we've done is we started raising funds and allocating resources. So it's not only about the money, it's actually allocating the products, tactical products for our first responders. In Efrat, we've started purchasing thousands and thousands of coats because our sons and daughters went up north, down south. At night, they're absolutely freezing. The army is providing them weapons, but they're not providing them the warm home that they could have had at home, but now need home to be at the war front. So we're bringing products to them. So it's actually been extremely challenging. So when we are here in our settlement, in our town, defending our homes, our new soldiers, or our first responder units, what they're called, are going into the battlefield without even basic protective body armor. Something that is so simple. The Arab savages that are around us, that we saw down south, have rifles, have weapons that can kill and shoot, and we don't have a way to protect. We have to make sure that if we're not at the front, we arm our sons, our daughters with what they need to be able to protect not only themselves, but to protect us.
Nir, it's exactly the same we have been doing since the second day when my son called and said, "Dad, we don't have the bulletproof vests." And they've been in the battle areas in Kfar Aza for 30 hours without the proper equipment. And I know the army is really in a situation where this horrible day came and we were not ready in many ways. But this is really one of the ways. And I understand, so well, because from that day that this call came from my boy, our whole family has been, looking for these bulletproof vests, getting money from our friends to buy these vests, because they're not cheap. I mean, we talk about $1,000 per bulletproof vest. And so thank God we have now the unit of my son. They are all fully equipped, but I know wherever I've been asking, there's been no vests available, and you cannot find them in the land. And if you want to bring them from abroad, I just heard you before you came fighting for the vests to be released in the customs. Was it correct?
It's quite complicated. They're trying to help us out, but unfortunately the army is taking charge of it. So we have found a way to get it into civilian units with the help of the customs authority. But now we have to have the whole stream work perfectly. We need the stars to be aligned to make sure that we actually get them in. It's complicated.
So when we see the headlines saying there's a new delivery coming for the army, it doesn't mean really that all the men that need it will actually get it.
Correct. We're assuming it's going to come to the army. My son, again, in the Golani Brigade, doesn't have a vest. He's going in, he says to me, "Abba, don't worry, we're going to crush them even without a vest. But if you can, please get me a vest." The answer is, we believe and hope today that the army units, when they're going to go into Gaza, they will get vests. We don't know if it's true or not. What we know for fact is happening is the people on the battlefront inside of Israel, in Judea and Samaria, and the towns that are the borders in Gaza and the borders up north, they are second priority right now. Maybe justifiably so, but if we can help the country, say, okay, you take care of the army right now, we will take care of, somebody said civilians. It's not civilians. These are home front warriors. Yeah. They're literally battling for our own homes. And I shared with you before, as I said, at Efrat we're building families. This past Shabbat, not this one, the week before, we had certain knowledge, certain, how do we say,
indications.
Certain intelligence. We had certain intelligence that our town was in direct threat of a major attack. And because of that, towns around us, each one had to take a certain decision. And we, at our emergency response team, we took a decision to actually close the synagogue so that there won't be one place where the Arabs can attack, and then there's going to be a mass killing like we've seen, a couple of weeks ago. So what we did was, we knew that what's strongest is prayer. We cannot forsake prayer. So while we closed the synagogues, we told all the men and women, let's congregate each group of people, small group of people, near their homes. Why? Because God forbid, if there is an alarm, the women and children need to enter into the safe room. They need to lock it up into their shelter. And the men need to battle for their lives. So you can imagine the discussion I had with my own family. I said, I'm praying 3 houses down. If anything happens, you go into the shelter and I will be outside trying to protect our home. They said, what do you mean? You're going to engage in battle with the terrorists? I said, yeah, we don't have a choice. Because we saw down south that if they didn't make it inside of the shelter, they just burnt the families from outside of the shelter. So we have instructions. When the savages come in, we the men, whoever is armed, and I'm walking around with 3 magazines. When did that ever happen? I own a gun. But never did we walk around armed like we are in battlefield to protect our own homes. That's striking. So on the one hand, strong prayer. On the other hand, strong preparation. The prophet tells us you shouldn't be afraid on the one hand, but Ashrei Adam doeg tamid. What does it mean, doeg tamid? What does it mean he needs to be afraid? Not really be afraid, because God protects. Be prepared. Rashi, one of our commentators, explains that you have to make sure that you're ro'eh tanolad. You see what is possibly coming ahead. You need to be prepared. You put your trust in God, but you have to prepare wherever you can. And unfortunately, we're not. We are not right now. We're still not prepared. As you saw, I was on the phone minutes before, making sure another unit gets bulletproof vests. I can tell you another paratrooper unit that my wife was speaking to. We're literally doing this 24/7. My wife was speaking to, the commander said, I love you, but it's too late. I don't even know what that means. We'll deal without. Who knows what that means?
That's heartbreaking. I mean, it just moves me to tears. When my wife was able to locate 10 vests, for the boys, and she went, all the way to Tel Aviv and bought them. So I had such relief, in my heart, like, okay, at least my boy has the vest. It's all fine. So we'll find the rest of the unit will also have them. Then the next day, I hear that he had given away his vest. And I can't express the frustration. And then I understand, of course, he's a commander. What else would he do?
Right.
He would, first and foremost, he would care for somebody else in his unit and not himself. Now, thank God the next day we had the vest for the whole unit. But I know that there are so many. And I mean, I was talking yesterday with Anat Berko, and they were on the program here. And so her daughter says 200 calls. She has had 200 people call her asking for the vests, bulletproof vests. So, I mean, it's not going to be over soon. It seems to me it's going to be a marathon. We have to be prepared, and we have to have to get all the help we can get from our friends, because this is a long battle. We see the border heating up in the north. We see the situation heating up in Judea and Samaria. So we cannot relax. We cannot think that, okay, we got this vests, we have to fight until everybody is equipped, everybody is ready. And we need your prayers, because as I said earlier, the tide has turned. We had the sympathy when the world saw the horrible atrocities, the dead children and burned babies. But now it seems like the world is believing the lies when Islamic Jihad launches a rocket and it hits the hospital or parking lot, actually, and Hamas stages as if Israel has hit the hospital. The whole world believes that lie. Even if we bring all the evidence, they still believe that lie. So we need you strengthened so that you can stand with us in these days.
Albert, I want to disagree.
Okay.
I don't think we need their prayers. I think they are obliged to give the prayers today, and I'll tell you why. God does not forsake his people. God will not forsake Israel. Whether you pray or you don't, God will not forsake Israel. So why put us through so much pain? We know that the barren foremothers of the Jewish people, why were they barren? Why didn't Sarah have a child? Why? Our sages teach us because Hashem, God, wanted the prayers of righteous women. When we have an atrocity or a difficulty that comes upon us, Hashem, God only, and only God, will redeem us from it. But he's telling you, he's telling us, he's telling me, he's telling you, Albert, Now is the time that you have to pray. You have to pray and you have to act. He doesn't need anybody's prayers. He's commanding those prayers. There is no time like today that you have to go out there. I said to my friends in America, I said, we're spending 24/7 trying to be out there on the battlefront. We have less time for prayer. You need to beef up your prayers. You should feel right now as if you're in the Israeli army defending every single Jew here in Israel. How do you do that when you're in America? How do you do that when you're in Switzerland? How do you do that when you're in London? You can do that in prayer, in rallying the troops that you have there to say, we stand with the God of Abraham. We stand with God. We stand here knowing that the Jewish people will be redeemed. The Jewish people will be protected. And we're telling you, God, we are with you today. So I don't think we need them. I think they are commanded to do it.
Oh, that's
and we appreciate the prayers. We appreciate everybody who joins in prayer. But now is the time that God is calling everybody out. Now is not a time to sit idly by. Cut your shopping times in the malls. Cut the television. Don't watch CNN anymore. It doesn't help our soul. Our soul will be helped if we spend our time in prayer and rallying for the people of God here in Israel that are literally struggling for our own survival. We know God will protect us, but we're struggling for our survival.
You know, there is a demonstration today in Geneva, Switzerland, taking place at 3 o'clock. There are several families of the hostages that are there demanding from the Red Cross to act. And we saw, of course, 2 women with American citizenship, they were dual citizenship, I guess, that were freed. But this kind of selection, it sounds horrible. I mean, we've seen selection during the Holocaust and in Entebbe and whatnot. So really plan to go for a prayer meeting. If you say, well, I cannot plan for my church, you know, to do a prayer meeting, you know, plan with your friends that you will have prayer meetings, whichever time is free for you or available for you, but make a long-term plan right now. Like Nir said, that you will be standing with Israel during this time, as long as it takes. Make the plan, you are in prayer, because God says, pray for the peace of Jerusalem, may they prosper who love you. So there is a blessing coming over everyone who stands in prayer. But we need to talk about the hostages. I mean, this is the most painful thing for me. I mean, their time, I sense the time is running out. I don't know what they've done with them. I don't know. I have no expectancy. I mean, I'm praying that they would be afraid, you know, harming them. But you know what savages they are, what they did to all of those whom they murdered in cold blood.
So I'll tell you 2 things before we go to the hostages. First of all, Albert, you've inspired me with the Jerusalem Prayer Breakfast I told you before. We opened up a website. It's not yet operational. It will be in the next few hours. Calling all of you, they can see me on that camera.
Sure.
Calling all of you for prayer, each one in his own way. So we put up a website inspired by the Jerusalem Prayer Breakfast.
Thank you.
Prayer for IDF. So every day I'll get on to offer another prayer, and I'm asking you to just write your names in there, that you're praying for the IDF. You're standing for the IDF and for the just and moral battle that we have to fight. So when we talk about the hostages, one of the first parents who actually went on public TV was a childhood friend of my wife. And he said, my son is captured on the other side, and I pray that he's going to be released. But we cannot hold back the battle before we release these hostages. We are here fighting for the body of Israel. We have to completely win this war, not only for the state of Israel, not only for Jews all over the world, but for what's just and right. This is a holy war. We pray for our hostages, and I think, we had this in the past, we have to be so strong and so forceful. The Bible is full of the demand of the Jewish people to fight against the Amalekites until the end. It's very difficult to read the passages. Till the end? Yes, until the end. And if we are strong enough and forceful enough, that I believe is the only way to demand the return of the hostages. We're not waiting. And when you mentioned the selection, my father is a Holocaust survivor. My father's a Holocaust survivor. He was born in Luxembourg. He was selected. He was able to be saved. Him, his brother, his mother and father, and his grandmother who he lived with, and his two uncles were sent to Ghetto Lodge, and a few days later, we know now, were savagely murdered. My father was on this train called a death train for 3 weeks, sitting on a car. Everybody has seen these cattle cars that they've been in, people dying inside. I mean, just terrible, terrible, terrible. And he immediately said to me, selection? I am a Luxembourg citizen, a US citizen, and an Israeli citizen. I fought in the Korean War in the US Air Force. I fought in the Yom Kippur War in the Israeli Army. And now you're telling me there's a selection? There needs to be here one selection. We want every hostage back right now. As you are watching this, we want them back right now. And if not, we will show that we have the resolve. Forget about the strength. We have the resolve to do what it takes. I think that if they understood that, they wouldn't mess with us. But to show the resolve, we need to do things that are very difficult for the world to see, and you need to come behind Israel and say, there is no other choice, because if we don't do this, they will keep chasing Jews all over the world, and not only Jews.
Not only Jews, that's the thing, because that's what we see rising all over the world. And they say first Shabbat people, and ironically, they did it on Shabbat.
It's very ironic.
And then Sunday people. But yesterday we were on this special report with Anat Berko, and Anat, I asked her, what about Qatar? I mean, it's Qatar giving the money for Hamas, and they are hosting Ismail Haniyeh, they are hosting Khaled Mashal in Qatar. So how can we put pressure on Qatar? Because, I mean, they are the culprits as a state. I mean, they are a state that is encouraging, supporting terrorism. And then she said something very interesting. She said, look, they have the largest US Army base there. Central Command is based in Qatar, in Doha. So I was thinking, I mean, I'm dreaming now. I'm really dreaming loud. But imagine putting Khaled Mashal and Ismail Haniyeh on house arrest. I mean, I'm really kind right now, in my dreams, right?
They don't deserve that.
Well, they don't. But again, until our boys and girls, elderly Holocaust survivors, babies, women, men are freed. I mean, it's easy. There's 300,000 people in Qatar, 2 million, foreign laborers that they bring in there. But I mean, they are there. The head of the snake is there. I mean, I'm just dreaming. Of course, I'm dreaming.
I don't think it's a crazy dream. I just think we need to have the resolve. How do we get that resolve? That's back to prayer. If we rally, and everybody sees, the leaders see, the Biden administration sees, it's nice that you came to Israel. It's nice that you now act. Stop talking. Start acting. That's a great suggestion to Biden. But really, we know that the minds and powers of leaders are in the hands of God. There is where prayer is strongest. We need to pray to God all day and all night. Like you said, do prayer groups in your homes, in your communities, where all the time. Really feel like you're right now a reservist in the Israeli Defense Forces. You can't come here, pray. A friend of mine said, I can't come here right now. I'm not going to be helpful. I'm over 50. They're not going to take me in the army. What am I going to do? I said, you rally the troops. Get us the vests. Gather the synagogues all over and pray. And they are doing it. The Jewish communities are building warehouses all around to be able to provide for what we need here in Israel. Any supporter, it doesn't have to only be Jews, rally the troops. And in prayer, we can have that power to direct the thoughts of the leaders of the world. I don't see any other way of doing that.
Well,
rallying, but I think prayer is even more powerful.
I think you're right, absolutely right, because many of our viewers, they know the phone numbers of the congressman and senator. You can pick up the phone. You can
Not
say,
you have to pick up the phone.
Well, here we go. You have to pick up the phone and send an email or send a message, whichever way you communicate, and say, look, this is the time to act. And this is the time, you have been postponing moving the embassy. The Estonian opposition leader said, isn't this the time now to move the embassy? I think many countries should now move their embassies to Jerusalem, recognizing Jerusalem as the Bible says what it is, the city of a great king. So you just cannot wait. Now is the time. And we have to really see to it that these moments of, danger would not turn into the moments of anger. We have to be over these moments of anger in order to be cool-headed and knowing what we need to do. Like the Queen Esther, she knew what to do in the time like this. Esther knew how to act. She knew how to do. Of course, Mordecai was helping Esther with some great ideas, and that's what we're doing here. We are equipping our friends with good ideas, aren't we?
We are told in Judaism that anger is idol worship. When we go to the army, I could tell you my son, I'm sure your son the same. When I saw him off, he has resolve, not out of anger, out of pursuing the just and moral war. So yes, killing in war, there could be killing out of anger, that's not justified. There could be killing out of making sure that you're doing what is just and right. That's not justified, that's mandated. That's God's command to us today. So now, today, we need to have that absolute resolve. But I'm not a dreamer, Albert. I'm a realist. And I, as a realist, think that this is positioned to be the last war. People could laugh about it, could say, you know what, you're a dreamer. I'm not a dreamer, I'm a realist. God puts points in history for total redemption. God has opened up that window. And when I talk to units all around the country, friends of mine that got married in the unit, they literally got married. A soldier, a man soldier, a woman soldier got married on the base. They got married and then continued doing what they're doing. We've been having letters at Efrat, which is just remarkable. Can you imagine this? The pro-life movement in the United States has to hear this. A woman writes to us, she has 2 children, she didn't want to have a third, and they had arguments in the family, and she says, now I know, we're building the Jewish nation. We have to have more children. It's a hopeful time. People focus on the sadness of all those that were killed. It's sad, but we're not dealing with the sadness now. Now we're dealing with making sure we win the just war, and in hopes that this war is the war to end all wars and bring total redemption for the Jewish people, bring back King David. I know it's not a dream. I think it's a reality if we take it from a religious perspective. We're fighting the war of God. It's not just a general war. It's not a secular state. We are here. There's a reason why the Jews are here. It's the promised land of the Jews. We are fighting that war. And if you will pray, if you will give whatever you can, if you will do whatever you can, then you are joining the Jewish people in maybe what is the war to end all wars. You talk about the Yemenis. Where did that come from? All of a sudden, them sending missiles that the U.S. Warships, shot down. Where did they come from? What exactly is going on the world scene? We're talking now about the Ukrainian war with Russia at the same time. A lot of things are happening in the world which are rather strange, all coming together. So we need to pray for that resolve. If we're doing the right thing, we go and we do the right thing and we don't wait.
Nir, do you think we are really moving towards the war described in Ezekiel 38 and 39? Is that the feeling you have?
I don't know, but the feeling is it's a moment of opportunity. I don't know. God has His plans, and we hope that we fit properly within that time. And sometimes I do believe that there could have been moments in history that we missed that opportunity. We also have to have a share in God's grand plan. That's why prayforidf.com, go on it, pray, connect. We'll keep getting updates from you, Albert. I'll try to do our share. All of us here in Israel want you to connect now to Israel at this just war. Want you to connect, but it's also your obligation to connect. Now we're all obliged. We're called by God for this war. Will it be the last war? We don't know.
Alevai.
But we are hopeful.
Yeah.
We're not dreamers. We're hopeful that this is going to be the reality.
Well, we are really happy that you joined us today here and that you will be standing with Israel in this difficult but victorious time. And thank you for informing your friends also about the IDF, how was it called?
PrayForIDF.com.
PrayForIDF.com. PrayForIDF, one word.
Yeah, one word.
.com. And
I'm sorry, prayer for IDF, a prayer. We
Prayer.
want to give a prayer.
IDF.com. And sign up and send your names and keep tuning in every day, 1 o'clock, so that we can give you the updates and answers for allies.
Thank you.